Up next, please welcome Steve Bowsher, CEO of IQT, for a session on delivering innovative solutions for national security agencies with moderator Martijn Rasser, Senior Director for Economy at SCSP.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you. Steve, it's a real honor to have you on stage. I've been looking forward to this very much.
It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you, everyone, for showing up to listen to us.
Well, as I'm sure many of you already know, In-Q-Tel, or IQT, plays a unique role by investing in breakthrough technologies across both civilian and defense sectors. And it helps the intelligence community stay agile and ahead in an increasingly interconnected tech landscape. So, Steve, given China's rapid progress in technologies such as AI, biotech, and with China's military-civil fusion strategy, how is In-Q-Tel adapting its investment approach to address the dual-use nature of these technologies and ensure that the U.S. maintains its edge?
Great. Well, thank you. First off, what I would say is, IQT's been around for 25 years, and we've been investing over those 25 years in the leading U.S. dual-use technology companies. So you could argue that we've been preparing all of our life for this moment here. So we continue to believe that the U.S. is going to produce great companies that are going to produce world-leading technologies that can be applied to both commercial use cases and military, defense, and intelligence use cases. What we're doing, though, in this moment where nation-state competition with China has heated up, and obviously we're all very focused on that topic, is we are trying to move faster than we ever have before. And by moving faster, that means getting closer to procurement and really tying our investing efforts to the procurement strategies being supported by this new administration to try and get technology deployed in mission operational environments faster than ever before. We're also trying to develop insight into where the next key strategic technologies are going, things like quantum computing, engineered biology, nuclear power, whether that's fission or fusion. So we're also making small investments in technologies that are a little bit farther afield, aren't necessarily being ready to deploy today, so that we are ready with our understanding and insights into where that's going to help our government partners adopt and adjust their mission and operational plans to the potential availability of these technologies in the future. And finally, what I would say is we are moving downstream a little bit. Obviously, one of the areas of strategic competition with China is around supply chains. And we are investing for the first time in technologies that the government might not necessarily buy, but that it's important that they exist to support the products or solutions that the U.S. government will buy. So we are investing in critical materials and minerals, in advanced and next generation sources of energy, and as I said before, in components and microelectronics as well.
What do you look for in a company before you make an investment?
So I think like most early stage technology investors, we look at the same three things that everybody else which is team, technology, and market. But I'd say we take a little bit different perspective on that last topic of market. So the venture capital industry, as I'm sure many of you know, is a hits-driven industry. 10% of the deals generate 70 to 80% of the proceeds. And so a lot of diligence by venture capitalists are around how big is this market? If this company wins, will it be a big winner? They want to believe that these every company that they invest in can be worth at least several $100 million, if not billions of dollars. That's how that model works for them. At IQT, as a strategic investor, we are not focused on the financial return to our investment. We're focused on getting great technology in the hands of warfighters and intelligence analysts. And so we focus, when we focus on market, we focus really on what I would call product mission fit, which is this technology the best fit for the mission needs of our agencies? And then we focus on the financial prospects of the company, not so much as to whether it can be a big win or not, but can they be around and survive and be a good partner and supplier to the government for several years? So we focus on, can they get to cash flow break even? Do they have a viable business model to be around, to continue to be the leader in their technology area? But we don't focus so much on whether that outcome is a $50 million outcome in terms of a company valuation, a $500 million outcome, or a $5 billion outcome. We let the traditional venture capitalists worry about that.
So part of IQT's unique value lies in connecting government end users, private innovators, and venture capital. So 3 very different worlds. How do you approach making these partnerships work for everyone involved? And could you share an example or 2 of where this triple win really came to fruition?
Absolutely. So, the first word we use, and we use it a lot, is trust. I think this model only works if you're trusted by the customers, if you're trusted by the entrepreneurs, and you're trusted by the venture capitalists. So that's where being 25 years old is a big advantage for us, is we've built that trust over the years. When it comes to the venture capital community, we've had over 10 co-investments each with top-tier firms like Andreessen Horowitz, Founders Fund, 8VC, Sequoia, Greylock. We have worked with entrepreneurs over the years such that we now have entrepreneurs coming back to us, working with us on their second or third companies. And we've built the trust with the government users, where we've deployed hundreds of technologies in mission operational environments for them. So trust is really the foundation of our model and how it makes it work. Next thing I would say that you have to layer on top of trust is an understanding of what they want out of the partnership. So you have to understand that what the companies really want is they want customers, referenceable customers, and revenue. What the government really wants is mission deployed technology deployed in mission operational environments. And you need to be able to speak the language of everybody. So we feel like one of our roles is to be a translator between government talk and tech buzzwords. In terms of examples, I'll point to 2. The first one, I think, is a company called FireEye that is now a leading cybersecurity company. But when we first invested in them and started working with them, they were still trying to figure out their sort of path in life, and they had great technology, but they were applying it to a different product or a different problem and product line than what our government customers wanted. And our government customers came in and through us told FireEye, we want to apply your technology to the email problem of cyber threats being delivered by email. And so they sort of went ahead and did a program with us to do a product for the government customers. And then at some point they realized their commercial product wasn't really working and their government product was. And so they reoriented the company around the email product, and that's when they took off and became sort of a huge success. So I think the important thing to understand about that model is the product requirements from the government end users ended up really helping the technology company understand a problem that was also existing in the commercial world. In terms of Anduril, I come back to the point about wanting to work with repeat entrepreneurs. So Trey Stevens came down and saw me in 2016. I'd known Trey from his involvement in Palantir, and then second when he became a partner at Founders Fund. And he told me that he was looking to build the next great company to sell primarily to DoD after Palantir and SpaceX, and he'd been looking to invest in one, couldn't find one that excited him, so he was going to start one with Palmer Luckey. And what he told us was he wanted to run the same playbook with Anduril that they'd done with Palantir, which is use IQT and its work program model to get its first government customers. And so we did that. We did an investment and a contract with them. We brought CBP to the table, and Anduril's first government contract was actually not with DoD, it was with CBP around border security, and they used that to launch the company and turn it into the success it is today. So those, I think, are 2 examples of how we deliver wins for all the stakeholders that we like to work with.
Whenever the United States does something well, our adversaries are paying attention, of course. So how is IQT vetting its partners and portfolio companies to guard against adversarial capital, for example, gaining indirect access to sensitive technologies, intellectual property, et cetera?
Sure. So, I think that's obviously been a concern of ours since the very beginning. China has been active in trying to buy, partner, steal technology from the United States in order to advance its own goals. And we had to recognize from day one that they would try and penetrate, our activity and the activities of our portfolio companies in some form or another. So the first thing we do is we do a security review of the company before we make an investment. That's done first by InQtel itself, but then second, we work with the government, U.S. government, to do a security review as well. We examine who the investors are in the company. We examine the background of the management team, the board of directors, and the people that might work directly with our government customers. The next thing I would say is, again, over 25 years, we've built up the trusted relationship with the co-investors so that we understand in some ways ways better than the US government of like, hey, who are the limited partners? Where's the source of money for these venture firms out there? And we know which ones we're comfortable working with and which ones we're not comfortable working with. And then finally, what I would say is we get a board observer seat for 95% of the investments that we do. That means we have a person at In-Q-Tel who sits in the boardroom of every company that we make an investment in and sees what's coming down the pike. So what happens sometimes, and if you want, I can use an example here. We had an investment in one of the early quantum companies. I won't say which one. And by sitting in as an observer in the board of directors, you start to hear the conversations around, all right, we're going to need to go out and raise money. Who are the investors that are sort of approaching us? In this case, this company told us one of the investors that's approaching us is a guy named Yuri Milner, who's a very successful Russian entrepreneur. He started the equivalent of Hotmail in Russia and made a lot of money in that. After he made that money, he moved to Silicon Valley, and he took a bunch of that money and invested in this small little company called Facebook that he then made a whole bunch more money off of, and he became a very active investor. And so he had approached this quantum company saying, I'm a physicist by background, I really love the technology you're doing, and I would love to invest in it. And he gave the CEO a term sheet at a high valuation with a lot of money to invest, and the CEO was all very excited about that. And we had to help the CEO understand that, like, look, that's good news. It's certainly flattering to be wanted. But if you take this money, you're going to lose your potential business with the United States government because they're not going to be interested in doing business with a company that has a Russian investor and board member, which was actually kind of a surprise to the entrepreneur. And this is one of the values we bring, is helping these two worlds understand each other. So instead, we worked with the company to sort of say, well, what if we introduced you to some American investors, got you an investment that's maybe not quite as much money at not quite as high a valuation, but still supports the ability for you to do business with the U.S. government. And he agreed with that, and we got that done, right? And that shows the value of being in the boardroom and seeing this coming ahead of time, because it's a lot easier to talk the CEO out of that deal before he or she has signed that deal with the investor. And we see that all the time now with Chinese investors trying to come in. And again, sometimes people are just excited about, hey, we got a term sheet at a high valuation, as opposed to thinking through the long-term consequences of taking money from certain sources of capital.
For the intelligence community writ large, what more should the IC be doing on export controls and investment screening to help protect the country against these types of threats?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic. Obviously, let's look at AI, for example, right? The export controls we put on chips, and particularly GPUs, which are the chips that people want to run their AI training models on, I think has had an impact on China in terms of their ability to make progress in AI. Now, China's certainly doing all sorts of things to work around that. But it has had an impact, and I think it's been a good policy by the U.S. government to do, and I think we should be exploring that in other areas. China is retaliating against it in some ways, or proactively striking at us in other ways, right, in terms of their restrictions on rare earth minerals and materials and other areas. We have a portfolio company of ours in the drone space that sold drones to Taiwan, and next thing you know, they were on a blacklist in China and they couldn't get certain components that they needed. And by the way, they anticipated that coming and had been spending 3 or 4 years trying to de-Chinify their supply chain, and had gotten pretty far along, but they still had 1 or 2 components that they hadn't been able to sort of, completely source out from non-Chinese sources, and they had to scramble to deal with that. So this is the world that we're living in right now. Supply chain is going to be a weapon of competition between the U.S. and China, and export controls and other policies are absolutely tools we can use to try and win that competition.
Yeah, so you mentioned Chinese drones, for example. You've been very vocal about stressing the need to create a domestic manufacturing base for expendable drones, of course. You mentioned semiconductors, rare earths, very similar vulnerabilities in that regard. So beyond IQT's own investment activities, what would you recommend be part of a broader national strategy to address these vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so I think, and by the way, I'm not the only one that thinks this, but we need a national tech strategy that understands what are the key technology areas that are going to drive global economic leadership, as well as global security leadership. And we need to make sure we're doing the best we can do to support great American companies becoming world leaders in those areas. One of the things we are particularly focused on is a phrase that is called alignment of the capital stacks. So one of the great assets we have in the United States is the U.S. venture capital industry, and they're going to invest $100 to $200 billion a year to build great technology companies. And for the most part, the trend in the U.S. venture capital investing industry over the last 10 or 15 years has been to shift more and more towards technologies of national interest, deep technologies like satellites, drones, energy, microelectronics, those sorts of things, right? Whereas 20 years ago when I got to In-Q-Tel, a lot of that money was going into consumer apps and things like that are great, businesses, but not really sort of lovers of geopolitical leadership. So that's great that the U.S. venture capital is doing that. Congress and the U.S. government has also passed, I think, a series of great pieces of legislation to try and support the creation of great American tech companies with non-dilutive sources of capital, loans, debt facilities, subsidies, tax incentives, that sort of thing. But oftentimes the non-dilutive sources of capital from the U.S. government go into one set of companies. In the U.S. venture capital, billions of dollars goes into another set of companies. And even though they're both trying to build great American tech companies, they don't really sort of end up in the same companies. We're trying to encourage through signaling effects that we believe we can do through our historical relationships to try and identify companies that both groups should be investing in. Because if you get both sources of money working together on the same companies, we think it will increase the likelihood that those companies are successful and become world leaders.
So Steve, you've stressed the value of contrarian thinking and long-term investing. What technologies, innovations are you looking at that may be flying under the radar for most people? And what areas of deep tech are you most bullish about for national security over the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure, so I got a couple of different thoughts here, and maybe I'll share on that question. First thing I would say is, when it comes to technology, obviously AI is something that everyone's talking about, and as well they should. But I think the thing that people aren't talking about enough, that's a little bit of a contrarian thought, is that we talk about AI as if it's an intellectual property race. Who's got the better model? We benchmark these models, in certain ways, and there's, these leaderboards and scorecards that people look at and sort of said, oh, this person solved this math problem this quickly, this model solved this math problem that quickly as well. But I think if you look at Mary Meeker's AI trends report that came out in the last week or so, which is a fascinating piece of work that everyone should be looking at, I think that one of the points she and her team make is that there are very few secrets in the AI model world these days. It seems like most people are taking similar approaches, and that really, I think the determinant winner is not going to be who has the better intellectual property, but who does a better job of execution. And I think there's going to be I don't think there's enough talk about how do you execute in the world of AI. How do you get the right mix of AI model, AI-based chips to operate the models on, energy sources to run all this on, and data to train and operate against, and apply that in a appropriate workflow way. I think there's an execution element to the AI race that people aren't talking about enough. So that's maybe my first contrarian thought. My second contrarian thought is that, again, I think when it comes to sort of the future of warfare, if you will, and defense tech, we're not doing enough talking about how fast the iteration rate is going in Ukraine and in the Middle East, but particularly in Ukraine. The lessons learned from Ukraine is that something works, it only works for a couple of weeks till the adversary develops some sort of countermeasure against it. And so when I think about how the U.S. is going to deploy these new great emerging technologies in potential conflicts going forward here, I worry that we are not doing enough thinking about how we match up the supply of technology in the budget of procurement to the iteration cycle that's going to happen at the edge, at the pointy edge, tip of the spear in the fighting. So we need to push decision-making out from the centralized part of the Department of Defense out to the warfighter in the field. We need to pair up our military fighters with developers, the way the Ukraine military forces have done. And we have to be and have an agile and reactive manufacturing base back here in the United States that can quickly adjust to these things. And that's how you win in the warfare here. I don't think we're doing enough talking about that. Finally, in terms of areas of technology that I think are interesting in, I don't know that we're spending enough time talking about bio or brain-machine interfaces, which aren't necessarily bio-related, but are still sort of life sciences related. There was an announcement earlier this week that they arrested 2 Chinese individuals for trying to smuggle in a bacteria that would greatly damage U.S. crops. And so I think there's going to be a biological agricultural warfare going on as part of this nation-state competition that we're not spending enough time talking about and thinking about what technologies counteract those threats.
Particularly appreciate your point on the importance of execution in AI, right? So much of SCSP's mission ultimately is about helping artificial intelligence in particular diffuse throughout the national security community, throughout America's economy and society writ large. That's definitely a discussion we need to be having as a nation. As a closing thought, you've had a front row seat to some profound technological shifts over the years. Looking ahead, what keeps you up at night, but also what gives you hope?
Yeah, so I think every early stage tech investor is an optimist by nature, because you inherently are investing millions of dollars in very speculative ventures. So I'll start with hope first. I continue to believe that the U.S. has the best culture, education system, financial system to create great technology companies. So I believe we can continue to innovate and be the leader of the world when it comes to most areas of technology. So even though China is aggressively competing against us, I think they have their own challenges. One of my favorite lines is, in the United States, the U.S. worries about AI hallucinating. In China, they worry about AI telling the truth. I think AI, as an inherently uncontrollable entity, it poses a unique threat to a command and control society like China and the CCP. And so I think they're going to have a lot of challenges about really embracing AI and leveraging it in its best manner possible. So that is, I think the culture and economic and academic system of the United States is what gives me hope and continues to believe that we can lead. What I worry about is, as I said, that we're not paying enough attention to certain areas of biology and agriculture and other technologies that aren't sort of front and center in our mind, and that could become a huge threat. The COVID situation in 2020 is just an indication of how damaging a biological threat can be to our country and our society. And I still don't think we're doing enough to sort of prepare for some sort of biological attack. And agriculture is just sort of an extension of that in some form or another.
Steve, this was a riveting discussion. Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great.